course, here's your expanded segment for key point 1, surrender is not defeat, flowing as part of the speech. It's crafted in the style and cadence of Sarah Jakes Roberts, warm, powerful, storytelling, and spiritual without mentioning her name and without headings. It stays thematically aligned with the other key points you provided, aiming for about 750 words. There's a lie that many of us have believed for far too long, a quiet whisper that says if you let go, you're losing. If you surrender, you're weak. If you hand over your struggle, you've failed. And I came here today to break that lie into pieces, because the truth is, surrender is not defeat. Giving your struggle to God is not waving the white flag. It's raising your hands in victory because you've finally realized that you were never meant to carry it all alone. I know how easy it is to feel like we have to handle everything ourselves. We live in a world that celebrates strength, hustle, grit, the kind of toughness that says, don't let them see you sweat. And while there's value in resilience, there's also danger in thinking you're the only one responsible for fighting every battle raging in your mind and heart. See, there was a time in my own life when I thought surrendering meant I was giving up. I was stuck in situations where my own strength had run dry, and yet I kept trying to muscle my way through. I'd pray, yes, but then I'd snatch back my problems like I didn't trust God enough to handle them. I'd say, Lord, I give this to you. But then stay up all night worrying, plotting, fixing, planning. Have you ever done that? You pray with your mouth, but your mind keeps wrestling like the match ain't over yet. But God began to show me that surrender is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's knowing that there are some weights too heavy for human shoulders. It's understanding that the same God who hung the stars knows how to hold your life together, even when it feels like it's unraveling. When we hold our struggles so tightly, we become prisoners of our own problems. We start believing that we alone must figure it out. That's when anxiety spikes, sleep disappears, and peace becomes a stranger. But when you say, God, I'm giving this to you, something miraculous happens. The problem might not vanish in that moment, but your heart finds relief, your mind breathes, your soul remembers it was never built to carry the full weight of life's storms. I'm not saying surrender is easy. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do because it requires trust. It requires humility. It requires you to admit that your wisdom, though precious, is limited. It means admitting you don't know how this will work out, but you believe that God does. And let me tell you, there's a freedom in that kind of trust that no human strength can match. There's a calm that slips in when you finally let go. Not because you're careless, not because you don't want things to change, but because you understand that you and God are in partnership, and you're not the senior partner in this relationship. Some of us keep wearing ourselves out trying to control what we can't. We're trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed. Trying to change outcomes that are out of our hands, trying to heal wounds that only God can reach. And it's not working, it's draining us. What if instead we shifted our focus from striving to surrendering? What if we dared to believe that our weakness is the perfect place for God's strength to shine? That when we let go, we're not falling apart. We're falling into the arms of the one who can handle what we can't. Surrender doesn't mean you stop showing up for your life. It means you stop trying to be God in your own story. It means you do what you can and you trust Him with what you can't. I've learned that some of the greatest breakthroughs come not when we're fighting the hardest, but when we finally say, Lord, I can't, but I know you can. It's in those quiet, surrendered moments that doors swing open we never could have forced. It's there that healing happens in places we didn't even know were bleeding. So if you've been gripping your struggle so tightly that your spirit is tired and your joy has gone missing, I want you to hear me. Surrender is not giving up. It's placing your battle into hands far bigger and wiser than yours. It's stepping into a freedom that comes not from control, but from trust. Because the God who created the universe has not forgotten how to care for you, He's not intimidated by your problems. He's not surprised by your tears, and when you give your struggle to Him, you're not losing. You're finally winning the fight you were never meant to fight alone. Absolutely. Here's key point 2. Observe, don't identify. Expanded into a 750 word segment written in the powerful, soulful style of Sarah Jakes Roberts, seamlessly continuing from your speech. No headings, no mention of her name, and a closing line for impact. I want to talk to somebody who's been feeling overwhelmed because of what's swirling around inside your own mind. Somebody who's been carrying thoughts so heavy that you're convinced they define who you are. And I came here to remind you that your feelings are real, but they are not the full truth of who you are. You can observe them, but you don't have to identify with them. See, we live in this world that keeps telling us, you are your feelings, you are your worst days, you are the mistakes you made, you are the fear you can't shake. And it sounds so convincing that we start saying things like, I am anxious, I am depressed, I am worthless. But those feelings are just visitors passing through. They might knock loud on the door of your heart, but they don't get to unpack and live there. You might feel like you're drowning in sadness. You might feel like you're wrestling with anger that you don't even fully understand. But feelings are like weather. They come and go. One day the sky is gray, the rain pours so hard you can't see, but eventually clouds break and the sun peeks through. And you realize the storm was never the sky itself. It was only passing through, and that's how it is with the things you feel. You are not your sadness, you are not your anger, you are not your shame, you are the person who's experiencing those things. You are bigger than the storm because God created you to be the sky, not just the clouds. There was a time in my life when I let my feelings define my worth. When I felt broken, I believed I was broken. When I felt abandoned, I believed I was unlovable. But God began to show me how to step back, to observe my emotions without letting them tell me who I was. You might be crying right now, feeling like the weight in your chest is never going to lift. But I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, what am I feeling? Not who am I? But what am I feeling? Because there's a difference. One question keeps you trapped, the other helps you break free. When anxiety whispers that everything is falling apart, you can choose to say, I hear you, anxiety, but I'm not you. When sadness tries to convince you that you'll always feel this way, you can say, I see you, sadness, but you're just passing through. There's power in naming what you feel without claiming it as your identity. You can say, I'm experiencing fear, instead of I am afraid. You can say, I'm having thoughts of failure. Instead of I am a failure, that small shift changes everything because it puts distance between who you are and what you feel. It gives you space to breathe. It reminds you that your true identity is anchored in something greater than your circumstances, anchored in the God who calls you chosen, beloved, redeemed. I'm not saying ignore your feelings or pretend they don't exist. No, God gave us emotions for a reason. They're signals, they're messengers, but they are not the whole story. They're not the final word on your life. Sometimes the reason we're stuck is because we've allowed temporary feelings to write permanent labels on our hearts. But your feelings are not authorized to define you. Only God has the authority to tell you who you are. And He says you're fearfully and wonderfully made. He says you're forgiven. He says you're His. So, the next time shame comes knocking, trying to remind you of every mistake you've ever made, I want you to stand tall and say, I see you, shame, but I'm not living under your name. When fear comes shouting about everything that could go wrong, answer it back, I hear you, fear, but I know who holds my future. Because when you become an observer of your feelings instead of a prisoner to them, You start to discover a peace that doesn't depend on what's swirling inside you. You learn that you can feel sadness without drowning in it. You can feel fear without being paralyzed by it. You can feel anger without letting it drive your decisions, and in that space between what you feel and who you truly are, God does His best work. He speaks truth, He offers comfort, He reminds you that your story is still unfolding, and this chapter is not the conclusion. So, don't let temporary feelings trick you into believing permanent lies. Watch your thoughts, observe your emotions. And remember that you are more than the storm. You are the sky that holds it all. Wonderful. Here's key point 3, the paradox of control, expanded into a 750 word segment in the rich, passionate, conversational style of Sarah Jakes Roberts, flowing naturally with the prior parts of your speech. No headings, no mention of her name, and ending with a closing line for impact. There's something I've learned about life, and I learned it the hard way. It's this: the tighter you try to grip things, the more they slip right through your fingers. The harder you try to control everything, the more out of control you end up feeling. It's a paradox, because we think if we just hold on tighter, plan harder, fight longer, we can keep the chaos away. But sometimes, control is the very thing standing between us and peace. I used to be the queen of control. I wanted to manage how people saw me, how situations turned out, how fast God answered my prayers. I wanted everything to make sense, everything to stay tidy, but life kept refusing to stay inside my lines. People still disappointed me. Plans still fell apart, and the more I tried to clamp down on life, the more exhausted and empty I became. And maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've been wearing yourself out trying to control what people think of you, or trying to control how your children turn out, or trying to force your dreams into existence on your own timeline. And it's draining you, it's leaving you anxious, frustrated, bitter. We think control keeps us safe, but sometimes it's the cage that's keeping us bound. Here's the thing: God never asked us to carry the weight of running the whole show. He never called us to figure out every outcome, fix every person, or predict every twist in the story. He called us to trust Him, to partner with Him, and to let go of the illusion that we have to be God in our own lives. I know how hard that is, because letting go feels scary. It feels like we're losing power, like we're being irresponsible. But it's not irresponsible to release what was never ours to hold. It's wisdom, it's obedience, it's faith. And here's what's beautiful: when we stop trying to control everything, we actually gain something far more powerful: peace. A kind of peace that makes no sense to the world around us. A peace that comes from knowing God is working even when we can't see it. Sometimes we think God needs our help to keep the world spinning, like if we stop worrying, He might forget about our situation. But God doesn't need our stress. He doesn't need our constant striving. He's not waiting for us to fix everything so He can finally move. He's already moving, and half the time we're blocking the blessings He's trying to give because our hands are too full clinging to control. I've learned that when I try to force things, I often create more chaos. I say things I shouldn't say. I push people away. I end up with outcomes that break my own heart. But when I let go, when I say, God, I trust you more than I trust my own plans, miracles happen. Doors open that I could never have kicked down. Relationships heal in ways I couldn't have orchestrated. Opportunities find me that I wasn't even looking for. Letting go doesn't mean doing nothing. It doesn't mean we stop showing up, stop working hard, or stop praying bold prayers. It means we do our part, and then we rest in knowing that God will do His. It means we stop obsessing over how it's going to happen and simply believe that it will. And sometimes the hardest part of letting go is letting go of the timeline. We want God to move now. Fix it now, answer now, but He's not bound by our clocks. He's weaving a bigger picture than we can see. And what feels like a delay might just be divine preparation. I know it's scary to release control. Especially when you've been hurt, disappointed, or betrayed. Control feels like a shield, but I promise you this, your real shield is God. And He can protect you in ways your plans never could. So if you're tired of trying to hold everything together, I want to encourage you today, loosen your grip. Take your hands off the wheel for a moment and let God drive. Trust that He sees what's ahead even when you don't. Believe that He knows what you need better than you do, because the paradox of control is this: the more you release, the freer you become. The more you surrender, the stronger you feel, and the more you trust God, the more peace and joy will flood places in your life you thought would always be chaos. Of course, here's your expanded segment for Key Point 4, Life's Dance of Light and Shadow, written in the vibrant, soulful, storytelling style of Sarah Jakes Roberts. It flows naturally with the previous segments, avoids headings, and ends with a strong closing line for impact. There's something God has been teaching me that I want to share with you today. Life is not all light and it's not all darkness. It's a dance between the two. It's the way shadows stretch across the ground when the sun sets low. It's the way sorrow sometimes sits side by side with joy. And for so long I thought the goal was to get rid of every shadow, to push away every dark moment, to only live in the bright places. But I've learned that even the shadows have purpose. Even the pain can become part of the beauty. Sometimes we're so focused on escaping struggle that we miss the treasures buried inside it. We pray, God, take this away, and there's nothing wrong with that. God wants us to bring our desires to Him. But sometimes the very thing we want removed is the thing God is using to shape us. I know what it's like to feel like you're stuck in a dark place. To look around and wonder why your life doesn't look like the highlight reels you see everywhere else. To question whether God has forgotten you, to wonder if there's any point to the suffering you've endured. But I want to tell you today, God wastes nothing, not one tear, not one heartbreak, not one sleepless night. It all gets woven into the masterpiece He's creating out of your life. There were seasons when I thought the darkness would consume me, when pain was my constant companion, when I couldn't see a way out, but looking back now, I realize those were the moments God was doing His deepest work in me. He was pruning away what couldn't go with me into my next season. He was teaching me compassion I never would have learned if life had only been easy. He was revealing strengths I didn't know I had because I'd never needed to use them before. We want life to be smooth and predictable. We want it all to make sense, but sometimes the most beautiful parts of your story are born in places you prayed you'd never have to walk through. The truth is, without the shadow, we wouldn't even recognize the light. Without pain, joy wouldn't taste so sweet. Without the lows, the highs wouldn't feel so high. I think about Joseph in that prison cell, betrayed by his own brothers. I think about Ruth gathering leftover grain in a foreign land. I think about David hiding in caves from the man who wanted him dead. If you'd caught any of them in their darkest moment, you might have thought their story was over. But God was writing chapters they couldn't see. He was preparing them for influence, for favor, for purpose far bigger than their pain. So maybe the darkness in your life right now isn't a sign that God has abandoned you. Maybe it's evidence that He's closer than ever. Maybe He's planting seeds in the soil of your struggle that are going to bloom in ways you can't even imagine. I know it's not easy to believe that while you're in it. I know it feels like the darkness is permanent. But hear me, darkness is temporary. Light always finds a way back in. That's why we give our struggles to God. Because we're trusting that He can turn even our lowest moments into stepping stones. We're believing that there's a purpose hidden inside the pain. That what was meant to break us might become the very thing that builds us up. Some of the most beautiful people I know are people who have been through deep valleys and came out carrying wisdom, grace, and compassion. People who can sit with someone else in their darkness and say, "I've been there, and you're going to make it through." Don't despise your shadows. Don't curse your struggle. Offer it to God. Let Him redeem it. Let Him transform it into something that not only heals you, but helps heal someone else. Because there's someone waiting on the other side of your breakthrough who needs to hear your story. You may not see it right now, but your struggle might become the very testimony that unlocks hope in somebody else's life. And that's why we keep showing up. That's why we keep giving it all to God, because He's the only one who knows how to turn shadows into works of art. So hold on, keep trusting, and remember that life is a dance of light and shadow, and God knows how to lead you through every step.